We got about 2 weeks left before we enter the NFL draft, and we have no idea who this team is going to pick.
We'll tell you what we think about it next on the Sports Report.
Pleasure to be back with my partner in crime, Chris. Haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a while. How was Mania?
Mania was great, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're getting back to more serious matters. The 2014 NFL Draft, where not a whole lot of people have any idea what the New Orleans Saints are going to do with their first pick, pick number 27. We're talking the NFL Draft. Looked over a lot of mock drafts. What did you find?
There's a whole lot of talent in this year's draft, and all the experts seem to be very torn as to who's going to take who and who's going to go where. The last thing I heard you told me about, there's rumors Atlanta might trade up to get Jadeveon Clowney from the Texans.
That's quite the possibility. The Saints moving up. If I'm the Houston Texans, I'm not trading out of that pick. There's so much you could do with that pick.
There's so much they need, though.
And they need a quarterback. And
yeah, they do.
If it was me, I'd go with the Texas kid, Johnny Manziel. I mean, that's just me.
That's just you. Being an SEC fan and a moral guy, I don't like Manziel just because of his ego. I think it's a little too big for his head at this point. But I mean, talent-wise, you can't rate him. He's great.
Right. He's a talent.
Absolutely. He's a freak.
Yeah, he is a Heisman Trophy winner. You cannot discount what he has done off the field.
Not at all.
I mean, I'm sorry, not on the field. On the field. But we're not talking Texans right now. We're talking the New Orleans Saints, and a lot of pundits out there. That's a word.
It's a political word.
That's a political analyst word, but a lot of pundits out there, I'm going to go ahead and use it, think the Saints can pick anywhere between a defensive lineman to a wide receiver in the first round with pick number 27. And some of those names that have come across, Dee Ford from Auburn, Coney Ealy, a defensive end from Missouri, and then you got names like Marquise Lee, who's a wide receiver from USC.
Yeah.
Those are some names being thrown around in the first round for the Saints. What do you think?
I'm thinking wide receiver is one of the main needs that the Saints have. I mean, we lost Lance Moore. We still have Colston, but he's kind of getting up there in age. We held on to Meacham, which is good as a deep.
Got Meacham for another year.
We have Kenny Stills. We've still yet to see a whole lot of Nick Toon from last year's draft because he got injured a little bit last season. The two main places the Saints need guys are the offensive line and a wide receiver. And a wide receiver, you mentioned Marquise Lee out of USC, Devontae Adams out of Fresno State. Kid's a freak athlete, and they also a lot of people have been talking about Brandon Cooks out of Oregon State too.
Brandon Cooks is another kid that could be a first-round pick for the Saints. If one of those LSU receivers are available, do you go after one of them at that pick?
I don't see why not. I mean, you get guys that are from the area, they'd be fan favorites, and I think in the Saints offense, they would explode. And I mean, I'm talking about Beckham and Landry being two of the best receivers in the country last year. I would love to see him in the black and gold.
Okay, so they make their pick with pick number 1. They don't pick again until the second round with pick number 58, and some names being thrown around at that pick. Vanderbilt wide receiver Jordan Matthews, Utah cornerback Keith McGill, offensive tackle from Tennessee Antonio Richardson, and the kid that you mentioned, Devontae Adams from Fresno State.
I would like more of an offensive. If they go with a receiver or a more skill position player with their first pick, go offensive line next because we need to keep Drew upright, and we got to protect that because he's the most vital part of the offense.
Antonio Richardson's a big kid at 6'6" and 300 pounds plus. He's got some strength to him. He's a little underrated, but he could very well help us on the offensive line.
Yeah, two guys that were also thrown around the offensive line. You got Marcus Martin from USC and Weston Richburg out of Colorado State. Now listen to these two guys. Martin's 6'3", 320.
Okay.
He's more of a size and power kind of guy, so if you wanted to emphasize the run game, you grab him. Or Richburg is 6'3", 298. He's more of a speed agility guy, and he's good at adjusting at that second level run game as well.
Moving on to the third round, Saints hold pick number 91 overall in the third round. Guys being thrown around at that pick, Notre Dame tight end Troy Nicholas, Rice cornerback Philip Gaines, and a kid that who's underrated for me is the standout running back from Arizona, Kadeem Carey, and he gave the Pac-12 fits.
He did. Well, here's my, and this is just us discussing. We're not experts by any means, but do we really need another running back?
Well, you lost Darren Sproles.
We
and
did.
You need...
He wasn't an every down back though, and you got Ingram, you've got Kyra Robinson, who everybody is loving, who barely gets any touches at all, and we still have Pierre Thomas.
Yeah, but I think what some experts are saying with Kadeem Carey is he's a guy that if the Saints do draft him, that you lose Darren Sproles, you put him in that Darren Sproles spot where if you needed to, you could put him back as a punt returner or a kick returner. If you needed to throw a swing pass out into the flat, you could get it to a guy like Kadeem Carey. Pierre Thomas and Mark Ingram are more of your power running backs.
Don't forget Kyrie.
Kyrie Robinson, again, is like a Curtis Martin. That's a Bill Parcells comparison there. So you don't have a scat back. Kadeem Carey could be that scat back that, with the new age NFL, that could be a very big asset, especially in this offense.
You do make a good point with that, yeah.
Moving on to the fourth round, we won't go past the fourth round because then if we keep going past the fourth round, we're going to take forever. I'm
also getting some really obscure names at that point.
Well, you get very obscure names, but I'm under the impression that the Saints may be drafting a quarterback in this draft, and a quarterback name that is being thrown around, other than the two obvious ones, and Zach Mettenberger and A.J. McCarron, that more than likely may be available in the third and fourth round. Another kid that I forgot about, Georgia quarterback Aaron Murray.
Well, he didn't get a lot of buzz after he went down with his ACL tear against, I forgot who it was, but
Went down late in the season, I believe.
yeah, he did. He and Mettenberger, I think, went out in consecutive weeks. Murray was first, Mettenberger was last against Arkansas. But Murray would be a good fit in the offense. He's of Drew Brees' size. I think he's, what, 6 even?
Six foot even, about 210 pounds.
And he has a little bit more mobility than Drew Brees does, and they both have an arm, and they're both great decision makers. I could see a Drew Brees Jr. learning from Drew Brees in this offense.
Right.
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I've heard a lot of comparisons to Drew Brees when it comes to Aaron Murray.
Yeah.
And he played in an NFL-type offense for Mark Richt at Georgia.
So did McCarron and Mettenberger.
So, I mean, the thing I like about Mettenberger and McCarron are not only are they NFL ready, they have size.
They do.
And, you know, that's one of the weaknesses with Drew Brees is his size. He's not tall. He has trouble seeing over that offensive line, but he's got an arm. All three of these guys have arms. I think either one of those three, Murray, Mettenberger, and McCarron, a lot of M's there, will work in this offense.
I absolutely believe so. I mean, and you look at Murray and McCarron are two great game managers. McCarron won 2 national championships. Was our favorite pick for the Heisman this past year based on his career, not a single season as it should be. And then you got Mettenberger, who's what, 6'5"?
Yeah.
6'5", he's tall, he can see over the line, he's got the arm, and we've seen what he can do under a real offensive coordinator. He blossomed last year, and he's a great decision maker, and he's got the arm to make those tough throws.
Not only was it a real offensive coordinator, it was an NFL offensive coordinator in Cam Cameron. Real quick, let's focus in on some of the NFC South first round possibilities here. We start with the number 6 pick, and that's the Atlanta Falcons overall. If they don't trade up to get Jadeveon Clowney will probably be off the board at pick number 6. So some options for Atlanta, assuming they don't go with Clowney. Khalil Mack out of Buffalo, outside linebacker. Anthony Barr, outside linebacker out of UCLA. And Greg Robinson, offensive tackle out of Auburn.
I've got Robinson, I've got Khalil Mack on my sheet. However, Atlanta gave up 44 sacks last year. Matt Ryan spent a lot of his time on his back last season. If I'm Atlanta, I need to focus on that offensive line. You mentioned Greg Robinson out of Auburn. Jake Matthews out of A&M could be a big call for them.
If he's available at that pick, that's a big pick.
And or Taylor Lewan from Michigan. At least one of those guys has to be around at pick number 6.
Oh, absolutely. So many options there for Atlanta. We go to pick number 7 real quick. Greg Robinson may be an option for Tampa Bay, the offensive tackle from Auburn. Tampa Bay needs a lot. A wide receiver is another need for Tampa Bay. Mike Evans may be available, pick number 7 for the Buccaneers. And then here's something we think you and I are under the impression that Manziel's going to go into the top 5. But if he doesn't go in the top 5, and he may fall into the lamp at Tampa Bay because, let's face it, Lovie Smith, head coach of Tampa Bay, said Glennon will not be our starter this year. Does that open the door up for Tampa Bay to draft a quarterback?
It absolutely opens the door up because, I mean, Josh Freeman, not an NFL quarterback.
Well, that's why they got rid of him.
Exactly. Glennon was a good Band-Aid. He threw for over 2,000 yards last year, but he's not a permanent solution. And I think it opens the door wide. That actually kicked the door wide open for Johnny Manziel. And if they go the wide receiver route with that number 7 pick, I could see McCarron, if he's still around in the second or third round for Tampa, them picking a quarterback.
Okay.
They need a game manager. You mentioned Mike Evans at receiver. Odell Beckham could also go to Tampa. He's got that great playmaking ability as a receiver, but he can also return punts and kicks.
Right, so that'll be another thing. And then finally, pick number 28, the
Carolina.
pick right after the Saints, the Carolina Panthers.
Those ugly boys in blue.
Losing Steve Smith is going to hurt the Panthers at the wide receiver position.
Steve Smith, Ted Ginn, and Brandon LaFell are all on separate rosters.
So now they have big holes at the wide receiver position.
Huge holes.
So now 2 wide receiver names that are being mentioned for the first round: Kelvin Benjamin out of Florida State, Marquise Lee out of USC. And if they wanted to create some sort of pass protection for Cam Newton, you go with Virginia offensive tackle Morgan Moses.
And you also got Alabama offensive lineman Cyrus Kwanjo as well.
If he's available, at pick number 28.
He did have injury issues, and he didn't have a very spectacular pro day, so that might have helped him slip down to number 28 in the draft.
I'm under the impression that Carolina's defense is as strong as it's ever been. That's not going to be an issue for Carolina. Carolina did not have a great offense last season, losing 3 wide receivers, starting wide receivers at that point. That's not going to help them either. They got big holes. Wide receiver is probably where they're going to focus their first 2 picks on. And do you have anything else with Carolina?
Well, I mean, we keep mentioning Marquise Lee, and he could either go really quick or go a little further down in the first round. He's a first-round pick.
That's
We know
a big
that
time
much.
name.
Oh, absolutely.
Now-
A lot of teams have been talking about him. My 3 guys were Marquise Lee, Chandler Jones out of San Jose State, who ran a 4.3 40 in his pro
That's
day.
speed, man.
That's fast, man. And then also, your guy out of Ole Miss, Dante Moncrief.
Dante Moncrief, who is
Moncrief.
who is projected to be the only Ole Miss Rebel drafted this year. But whoever gets him, whether it be the rivals in Charlotte, or whether it be the Saints, or whether it be anybody, they're going to get a quality wide receiver who runs a 4.4 40 that has got size at 6'2". He's got good hands, not the best hands we've seen out of Ole Miss, because I'm under the impression Mike Wallace had the best wide receiver hands. He's down in Miami, New Orleans kid. But Moncrief's going to be an asset to whoever picks him up.
Absolutely.
We're about out of time here, so final thoughts about the NFL draft overall.
It's going to be fun. I can't wait to see who that first pick is, if it belongs to Tech, Houston, or Atlanta. They trade up for it. And you and I talked about it. We wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Saints or anybody in the NFC South take a quarterback in the first couple of rounds.
Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton have been known to pull off some crazy things in the draft. We've seen them trade up to get 2 first-round picks. But then again, this entire organization in its history have done some crazy things. Need I remind you about 1999?
Oh, God, don't remind me of Ricky Williams. Don't do that.
It all was part of the building blocks of a franchise that won Super Bowl 44.
Well, don't forget, the longest standing current head coach GM combo in the league as well. So
Best
they
tag
know
team-
what they're doing.
Best tag team in the league. We just got to see.
In
how it
Loomis and
plays.
Peyton, we trust, guys.
Yes, we do. Special thanks to everybody that has put on this production. Ryan Kennedy again back as our cameraman. He's off camera, but he's
Hold
giving
your
us
applause,
a
please.
he's giving us a little wave there. And I think that about wraps it up. And for Chris, I'm Paul, and this has been another episode of the Sports Report.